You have custody and control of the data, of course. You collect it, you do things with it, it resides in your servers. Of course, you have custody and control of the data. But with that comes a very strong duty of care. There are a number of things you have to do to protect that data. And I went on and on. Well, he wasn't very happy with me, so I sat down. He was polite, but in effect patted me on the head, you know, yes, yes, and go. And I had said I was from Canada, and he said, oh, yes, you people from Canada. So this wasn't getting any better. But I didn't want to do another round, and so I politely left afterwards. The great thing was these two gentlemen came up after me, followed me outside. One of them was Phil Carson. He's a reporter with, I think, Intelligent Utility Magazine. Great guy. And he was shaking his head at what this guy had said. And he said, no, that doesn't reflect the views of the industry. And would you do an interview? And actually, I'd like to do a series of interviews. And so it led to wonderful relationships in another area. So that was the sort of the good thing that resulted from that. Then I went to the dinner that night with Ken and these senior executives, and I was seated next to someone. He was a very senior executive from San Diego Gas and Electric. And I'm ready to do another round, okay? I'm assuming people are thinking like this other guy. And I said to him, so what do you think about the customer data? What do you do with your customer's data? And he looked at me and he said, what do you mean? We don't do anything. It's the customer's data. It belongs to the customer. We want to do something with it, we get their consent. I could have kissed him. I didn't, because I was trying to be respectful. He was the exact opposite. He was outstanding. I spent the entire evening discussing this with him, and he really meant it. I mean, he really got that this data is the customer's data, and can reflect enormous activities that take place within the home. In fact, I gave him a couple of examples, like the things you might think, well, maybe you would know more than I would, but I was thinking, well, you know, when I wake up, when I shower, when I go to sleep, when I'm watching TV, when I leave the house, things like that. And he looked at me and said, we can tell way more than that. I said, I don't want to know. But he was just saying, we have enormous respect for the customer. It does reveal information and patterns relating to their usage, electrical usage profile, and we are very respectful of that. And if we want to use their data for some purpose that will hopefully benefit them, we ask them. It's opt-in. I was just absolutely delighted. We went home, wrote him a letter, and we said, we want to work with you. We are looking for a US partner, and I can think of no one that I would prefer to work with you than someone like you, because you are so respectful. So anyway, that set things in motion, and we got things going. That's the background. And now we're working with them. It's excellent. So I'm just going to jump through the next slides. Smart grid is expected to be bigger than the internet. Who knows? But it is going to be a significant undertaking. And consumer confidence and trust is absolutely essential to the grid, as you know. This was the example when I was here last. I don't mean to pick on PG&E. I'm sure there are many reasons these things happen. But I think if they had jumped ahead of the story, they could have certainly curtailed it, possibly avoiding it. The whole point of being proactive about privacy is precisely to ensure that the harm is avoided and preferably prevented. So this all led to a number of interviews that I was asked to do. And we got onto the question of ownership. To me, it's not about having a law in place that will create a certain structure that will give ownership or not. I actually prefer not to talk about ownership because that invokes property rights, and there's a lot of baggage that goes with that, and activities and things you have to do and legal structure. My preference is to think about what do you have to do in your field to create that level of confidence and trust in your customers so that they will engage in the use of smart meters, get advanced metering to get going, make use of time of use rates, and actually conserve energy and participate in this program. How do you get that happening? And in order to do it, you have to, in my view, have a dialogue that's ongoing with your customers. They have to know what is happening with their information. Because you have to remember, it's their information, recorded information about an identifiable individual. That's usually one of the definitions of personal privacy. And the area of digitization is growing enormously and extending the concept of digitization. So we talked to a number of individuals in order to get some white papers out. We did a paper a while back with the Future of Privacy Forum, and it was my first entry into this, 2009. The position that I took, and all this started, I was asked to do an interview, and I didn't know much about the area. So I learned as much as I could in a very short period of time, one evening, and I talked to the reporter who happened to be a co-author of a book that he and I wrote called The Privacy Payoff, Tyler Hamilton. And I said, Tyler, here's what I've learned in a very short period of time. It struck me that privacy was a sleeper issue. I didn't see much happening about privacy on all the literature that I scoured in that short period of time. And I said, but it just seems to me we really have to focus on this. I mean, think about it. Your home, your house is your castle. The activities that happen behind the walls of your house are supposed to be sacrosanct. Yours, no one else's. And that's one of the last bastions of privacy that most people agree should, in fact, be protected. How do we do this if there are different ways to peer into the household? And then there were a number of other articles that arose, and the story started getting legs. Now, one of the good things, this is one of the major papers in my jurisdiction, had a full-page ad article, Can the Smart Grid Know Too Much, and what it could know, and the various impacts which we could all imagine. The good news was our Minister of Energy, Brad Dogood, took this to heart, and he said, okay, that's it. We are going to treat this seriously. We've taken up the Privacy Commissioner's views on this, and we're issuing a directive, which they did, in terms of who can do what with information that is obtained, and it's a wonderful directive. It's very privacy protective, but it does not tie the hands of the utilities. And then we wrote this paper. I think you have copies of the papers, right, Ken? Yes, good. So these copies are available. They're also on our website, but I always think it's cooler when you can actually look at a copy. We wanted to just establish some best practices for utilities around the world. How should you do this? How can you do this? We always want to make it easy for you to do it because you're in the business, utilities are in the business of doing things, and their expertise is energy production, generation, distribution. It's not privacy. It shouldn't be privacy. That is hopefully our expertise.